Aaron. Okay. Come on in. Hi. I just met with your family. Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you.
Of course, of course. I just want to look up based on the question. I don't remember. I believe it was 2022. I want to double check that. Um, the next one is going to be in 20 years from now. Amen. Ken Yehiratz. Yeah. You know what? It was in 5781. So that's 4 years ago. Because we're in 5785. So it was in the height of COVID, was when the last time we had one of these. And that's the reason why none of us remember, because we don't remember anything that happened during COVID. It's all just a blur. Yes, hello, everybody. Hi. Okay. All right. So I put together a 1-page primer that'll help us just go through. I don't mean for this discussion tonight to be exclusively focused on what to do when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, because every couple of years we try just to do a refresher course on Pesach in general. So if anyone has questions that you'd like to ask of a general nature, please feel free. But let's go through this information first, and then time allowing, we'll go into other topics as well. Okay, so this year, I'm just going to read it from the sheet so that we go through it, and please feel free to raise your hand if you have questions. This year, in addition to all the halachos that go into making Pesach, there's an additional complexity in observance that we aren't as familiar with, since it doesn't occur often. The last time was in 2021. Erev Pesach, which is usually when we are busy doing our last-minute cleaning, doing a siyum for the firstborn, selling our chametz, burning our chametz, this year falls out on Shabbos, thus precluding us from all our normal Erev Pesach activities. The following document outlines protocols for when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos. Okay, so number 1, Shabbat HaGadol. While technically the Shabbos before Pesach is called Shabbos HaGadol, it is customary for the Rav to give a drasha with practical information about Hilchos Pesach. If the Rav were to give his drasha the day before Pesach, it would not be of much help, because it's too late to do anything about it. Okay? So in other words, if you already made your quinoa, now you don't know. Like, I get a lot of questions about different products, right? So it wouldn't be of help. So the custom is for the Shabbos before Shabbos HaGadol to be designated for the Shabbos HaGadol drasha. This will be on the afternoon of Shabbos, April 5th. And we're going to spend literally the first 5 to 10 minutes just reviewing the information that we go over tonight. And the rest will be on the topic of Paro versus Moshe. Must a Jew show honor to an evil monarch? And I'm going to try to insert some of my political commentary as well, but I digress. Okay, so that's the first difference, which is Shabbos HaGadol. Okay, Shabbos HaGadol is this, the drasha is this Shabbos, even though this Shabbos is really not designated as Shabbos HaGadol, because the truth is there are many other reasons why Shabbos HaGadol is called Shabbos HaGadol. And so only one reason why it's called Shabbos HaGadol is because of the the day seems more lengthy because the rabbi is giving a lengthy discourse that he normally wouldn't give, and therefore it's called Hagadol, the big day. But for this year, it gets pushed to the Shabbos before. Next, fast of the firstborn. This fast day is for the firstborn males of each family on Erev Pesach to commemorate the miracle of the plague of the firstborn. I do want to remind you that if a father has a son who is a firstborn, and that the father's firstborn son is a minor, then the father has to fast for his firstborn son. So therefore, the father has to go to the Siyum Bechoros if he doesn't want to have to fast. That's just a general rule. Since we're not permitted to fast on Shabbos, we push the fast to the Thursday prior, not Friday, since we never push a preempted fast to Friday so that people don't enter into Shabbos in a state of ravenous hunger. Our minhag is to offer a siyum for the Bechorim, which would allow them to eat. As such, we will be offering the siyum at each of our daily minyanim on Thursday morning, April 10th. Stay tuned for details because that'll be published in our next bulletin. Okay, so that's important to know. You're not going to come to the Siyum Bechorim on Friday. You're going to come to the Siyum Bechorim on Thursday. Okay, so did the Gaboim know that, Eddie? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Number 3, Bedikas and Bir Chametz. We will search for chametz on Thursday night, April 10th, after 8:41 p.m. You do make a bracha on the bedika, and the chiddush of that is, here you go. Why don't you take mine, because I have it on my screen.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure, of course. The chiddush here is, the novelty of this halacha is that normally, if let's say a person were to go out of town before the night of Erev Pesach. So normally you would do a bedikas chametz the night before you leave your house, but you don't make a bracha. Here, we're telling you to make a bracha, even though it's not the night before Pesach. So that's the unusual part of this. But since this is the way that the sages ordained it, lechatchila, for this year, you do make a bracha. We will recite the Kol Chamira declaration, which is a declaration that anything that I have not found should be kehefker ka'afra da'ara, should be like completely hefker, completely ownerless. But if you're setting aside chametz to be consumed on Shabbos, you should put any chametz that you're leaving over for Shabbos in a tightly sealed bag or disposable container and segregate it in a specially designated place. When doing bir chametz the following morning, which is going to be Friday morning, and we're going to have the fire department here again with the big bin of burning chametz. Even though technically we are permitted to partake of chametz the entire day, we comport ourselves as if Friday, April 11th is Erev Pesach, in order to avoid confusion for future years. And we therefore burn the chametz by the end of the 5th hour, something 11 something or other, which, it says, sorry, in Thornhill is 11:48 a.m. The only difference this year is that after Bir Chametz, you will not recite the Kol Chamira declaration and will rather say it on Shabbos morning as per below. Okay, so that's just one important exception. Yeah.
Say it early. What exactly do you see? It's no good bracha. You do the 10 thing. What do you do exactly?
So if, let's say, you're leaving your house for vacation early and you're not doing Bedikas Chametz on the mandated evening. So that's a good question. It comes up every year. People go away for Pesach and they're going to be leaving, let's say, 3 days before Yontif starts. So you always do the Bedika the night before you leave the house. According to the Chasam Sofer, what you can do is you can sell all the chametz in your home as long as no one's going to be coming in and out of the house. And you just have to do a Bedika on one room. You do not place pieces of bread down and you do not make a bracha, but you recite the Kol Chamira. You use either a candle or a flashlight, just like you would normally do Bedikas Chametz.
Like no 10 pieces.
But no, you look around a little bit.
You do see it. Okay.
Yeah, so what we would recommend is, in that kind of case, is choose a bedroom where you know is relatively clean. And just, search around, look in the corners, look in the closets, look under the beds, and then you're okay. And you fulfilled the mitzvah of Bedikas Chametz for the. So then you should appoint them to do the Bedikas Chametz the night before Pesach for you. Yeah. And you have to, in that case, you really have to seal off anywhere that you're not cleaning for Pesach. Because your Pesach should not be accessible to your guests either. Okay.
In
Yeah.
this scenario where you're gonna be going somewhere else, and you're gonna do a Bikar Chametz, like in my case, I'm going this road.
Right.
I'm gonna be doing, I gotta do one here without a bracha.
Right.
Do I do another one there with a bracha, the way you're supposed to do?
As long as you arrive before the night before
Yeah.
Pesach. So
And
if
then
you,
So you would be saying, in my case, a kol chamira before I hear,
yeah,
another one there.
Right.
Another one Shabbat morning,
that's right.
like 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with a kol chamir. It's just merely a declaration. It's a declaration that I hereby declare my chametz ownerless. Yeah. Yes.
In this case, we're doing the day before, do we have to get rid of all the garbage?
No, you don't have to get rid of the garbage until, well, you should try at least by Friday midday to get rid of all your garbage. So you should try if you can. If you're not able to, then we do allow you to comport yourself to get rid of it later in the day. But it's certainly preferable, just like we do biur chametz, we do the burning of the chametz by midday. You should also try and get rid of all your garbage by midday as well. Okay? All right. Now, the only difference this year is that after biur chametz, okay. Now, the sale of chametz, similar to biur chametz, the selling of your chametz to a non-Jew will be done as on Friday, as if Friday is Erev Pesach. We will thus do the sale on Friday morning before the time of biur chametz. Please make sure you have all your chametz sale forms emailed by Thursday afternoon, April 10th at 2 p.m. at the very latest, to give our office time to print out your form and include in the sale. I always do get people who come in a little bit late, frantic, frazzled. And one of the things that we do tell the person who's buying our chametz is that we may get some last minute people who come in and they're included in the sale as well. But you don't want to rely on that. I typically do the sale of Mechiras Chametz around 9:30 a.m. on Erev Pesach. This year I'll do it on Friday morning. And so you certainly want to make sure that you don't leave your Mechiras Chametz for the last minute. If anyone wants a Mechiras Chametz form, you can find them. They're in the Turk Beis Medrash on the Bima. I just printed out a big stack. You can find them there on the Bima in the Turk. Okay? Yes.
The sale of items doesn't really take effect until after.
No, the sale takes effect immediately, but what's excluded from the sale are those portions of chametz that you've segregated and that you don't want to be included in the sale. So we're assuming that the challah, you're not selling your challah, right? Because you're going to want to use that, if indeed you're going to use challah on Erev Shabbos, which is another thing that we're going to discuss. Okay? No, we'll talk about how to dispose of it on Shabbos. You do have to dispose of it. So we'll discuss that. Okay, Shabbos meals. Okay, this is where we're up to. On Shabbos, we are obligated to have one meal with bread, lechem mishnah, on Friday night, one meal with bread, lechem mishnah, on Shabbos morning, and a third meal, sudah shlishit, preferably with bread, on Shabbos afternoon. This presents a challenge this year, since we will already be Pesach dik, with our houses cleaned and our Pesach utensils already out. We cannot use matzah for our lechem mishnah, because it is forbidden halachically to eat matzah on Erev Pesach. The Gemara says, Kol ha'oichel chametz be'erev Pesach, ki'ilu boel arusato beveit chamiv. That if a person eats chametz on Erev Pesach, it's like cheating with your fiance on the eve of the wedding. And the analogy that the rabbis are trying to say is, you're going to have a mitzvah to perform, and you want that mitzvah to be exciting and to have it, to feel it for the first time, at least since in a very long time since you've had matzah. Why spoil that by eating matzah on Erev Pesach? It's not an appropriate thing to do. And this is codified in halacha, that it's not permitted to eat matzah on Erev Pesach. Now, with that said, so we can't have matzah on Erev Pesach. And so, furthermore, we are not permitted to eat chametz on Erev Pesach past the 4th hour of the day, which is about 10:30 in the morning, according to at least the calendar that we use. So what are some of the solutions? So we're going to present 2 viable solutions. There may be more, but these are the solutions that are accepted by most of the poskim. Option A, before Shabbos, set aside just the amount of bread that you and your family will need for lechem mishnah. Place it in a tightly sealed bag or disposable container in a designated place. And that way, it's not included in the burning of the chametz. It's not included in the sale of the chametz. When it's time for hamotzi, use disposable tableware as a precaution, and keep the bread on special disposable plates, which will be disposed of immediately after consuming your lechem mishnah. Then proceed with your meals as normal. For the crumbs that are left over on the plates where you had your bread, take these plates over to the toilet, shake off the crumbs and any other leftover bread into the toilet and flush. Okay? You should do the very same for any crumbs that may have fallen to the ground. That's definitely a viable option if that's what you want to do. Now, I don't do that method, and the reason why I don't do that method is because it causes my wife distress. And I'm serious. If it's going to cause nervousness, stress, tension in any way whatsoever, why bother? You have a viable alternative. And as a matter of fact, we're going to be doing Friday night meals here at the shul. We're debating whether we're going to offer Shabbos morning meals as well. That's in the works. But we're definitely doing a Friday night. And if you haven't registered, you probably should do that sooner than later because it's filling up. Because I guess a lot of people don't want to have to deal with Shabbos before Pesach. So the other option is to use egg matzah. This is the psak of Rav Moshe Feinstein and a number of other poskim who hold that since, at least for Ashkenazim, this is a viable option, since we cannot use egg matzah to fulfill the mitzvah of matzah on the night of the Seder, then it doesn't fall under the prohibition of eating matzah on Erev Pesach. It's not considered matzah. At the same time, it's not really considered chametz either. So, as a result, you can have the crumbs of your egg matzah all over the place without it all having to worry that you've messed up your Pesach utensils and that you've done anything wrong. If it's mizonot, if you're not koveya seuda, but if you're koveya seuda, if you make any mizonot, that you make that into your meal and you use it as bread, so you have to wash and make hamotzi for it and say birkat hamazon. For example, flour tortillas. If you like tortilla wraps that are made out of flour and you use it in a sandwich instead of using sliced bread, so you have to wash and make hamotzi and bench. As long as you use it as bread in a meal, you are koveya seuda. You set aside, I'm having this as a meal, and my meal is going to be comprised of, in lieu of bread, I'm going to be using X that is made of the 5 grains. Then you wash, make hamotzi, and bench. Okay. Same thing would be true of pizza and many other kinds of things that we call pata babikisnin. And it's a lengthier discussion. But egg matzah would warrant hamotzi if you're using it as your meal instead of bread. Yeah. So it's kosher lePesach. We don't. The minhag of Ashkenazim is not to eat it on Pesach unless someone is ill and they cannot eat anything else because of some stringencies associated with the possible speedier fermentation when you add other things other than water to flour, but it's really not chametz. So if you wanted to keep it with your Pesach stuff, you could. Okay. You just shouldn't eat it on Pesach. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
you have to flush the crumbs from the challah. Is there an issue of shaking them outside?
You could shake them outside. You could just scatter them into the wind. Yeah.
You mentioned the tortillas. So if you, could you use tortillas, two tortillas in the way that you use two olives? Or it has to be as part of a sandwich? Could you use that in this situation?
You're not really accomplishing anything, Aaron, if you did, because they're just as chametz as a challah, a tortilla.
That's correct.
Oh, they're less crummy. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes, that's true. You could. And what people do is they buy a pita, and the pita has less crumbs. Yeah. You could use two tortillas in theory. Yeah, sure, sure. To render it inedible. I still think that being in possession of it is still problematic. I wouldn't recommend that as a first resort. I would tell you it's best to plan ahead before Shabbos and dispose of anything that you don't plan on eating on Shabbat. Okay? Yes, one sec. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, please. Yes, what about boiling matzah? So there's a on Erev Pesach, we're not permitted to eat matzah in its natural state. But if you were to take matzah meal and boil it and make knedlach out of it, like matzah balls, you could eat matzah balls on Erev Pesach because it doesn't have the same flavor as regular matzah. However, you'd have to finish consuming your matzah balls by the beginning of the 10th hour of the day, which is like around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because you're not allowed to eat anything as you get closer to the night that may make you lose your appetite. And also I'll address that in a little bit. But yes, if let's say for your breakfast meal, you wanted to serve soup with knedlach, with matzah balls, you could do that as long as the matzah balls are, yeah. You could do that for 100%. Yes.
Because some of the filter fish is made with matzah meal, whatever,
And that's fine. Matzah.
Same thing happened with our place up in Shabbos like 3 or 4 years ago, I forgot, maybe more.
4.
And we were told that a shiur of matzah was 2 boards of egg. So we're sitting there eating 2 boards, take our 15-minute walk.
You mean 2 squares? That's what you have to have per meal?
Boards of egg matzah. Took a walk, and like 20 minutes later, we're like, oh my gosh, we need another 2 boards of egg matzah.
Yeah.
For Shabbos.
I don't know who you spoke to. Okay. I hope it wasn't me. Yeah. Yeah.
Consider like your first meal is just gonna be like kiddush, matzah, and maybe like a piece of cookie after something, and then that's your first meal. How, like, what's the shiur of egg matzah? Like, do you know, like, I don't know if it's.
Generally speaking, it's 2/3 of a matzah square. Yeah. And the same thing with egg matzah. No, it's the same. Yeah, it's fine. There may be a more stringent opinion, but it's fine. You can treat it like regular matzah vis-a-vis having a meal. So use only egg matzah on Erev Pesach for your meals. Egg matzah is not considered usable for Ashkenazim on Pesach, except for people with health conditions, but is not considered chametz, so it can be placed on your Pesach utensils. There is also no prohibition of eating egg matzah on Erev Pesach, at least up until the time when you may eat chametz, until 10:30. You also avoid the anxiety and cleanup issues from option A. According to Rav Moshe Feinstein, this is a perfectly acceptable option. This is also the minhag in the Korotkin home. I certainly recommend this option. especially if option A will create nervousness or strife. Yes, I don't know. I wasn't there. Maybe speak. I never spoke to Rav Moshe, unfortunately. No. But I invite you to contact one of his descendants. Maybe they have a tradition as to what they did in the Feinstein home. But Rav Moshe this is one of his earlier tshuvas. It's from the 1950s when he was in America, and he very much endorsed this practice. Now, regardless of whether you use option A or option B, we still have to address the second challenge, which is that after the end of the fourth halachic hour of the day, which in Thornhill, according to some calculations, is 10:31 a.m., one cannot eat chametz or egg matzah. So what can be done? Firstly, we will be holding services earlier than normal on Shabbos morning, April 12th, so as to allow everyone to get home in time to have 2 meals by 10:31 a.m. Because we want to give you the opportunity to have your first meal and your second meal, what we would call Sudah Shlishit, Shalosh Shudas, by 10:31 a.m. That is, you will have your morning Shabbos meal early with either bread or egg matzah. You will bench, then take a short break where you should leave the room, go for a walk, or read a book for at least 15 minutes. You may then wash again, have a second meal with bread or egg matzah, and this will count as your Shalosh Shudas. Make sure that all your chametz or egg matzah is fully consumed by 10:31 a.m. You should then make sure to recite the declaration of Kol Chamira and have all of your remaining chametz flushed or scattered before 11:47 a.m. Now, this is to allow you to have a full 3 meals with bread on Shabbos, even though it's Erev Pesach. So just to let you know, our schedule for Erev Pesach as far as davening, we are going to be having 3 and only 3 services Shabbos morning. One will be at 6:10 a.m. That's going to be the Netz minyan. That'll be in the Turk. Then there'll be a 7 a.m. Nusach Sfard minyan for this new group of Chever that daven Nusach Sfard in our shul. And then we'll have the regular main shul minyan at the very late hour of 7:30 a.m. So that's the latest we're going to daven. Our goal is to finish by 9 a.m. everything. So that gives you time to go home, have a leisurely meal, and then take a little spatzir or a rest. And then if you want to wash for Shalosh Shudas. Yes, Del.
If egg matzah is not chametz and it's not matzah, why do you have to finish eating it by 10:30? Why can't you eat it?
It's a valid question. And the answer is because according to those shitot that say that egg matzah is in some way akin to chametz, it's a chumrah that we don't, because there is a shita that and that's the reason why Ashkenazim do not eat egg matzah on Pesach, because there is a stringency that there's a question. Does the introduction of fruit juice or egg, when it's mixed with flour, does that retard the leavening process or does it accelerate the leavening process? So most of the poskim opine that it retards the leavening process. So you have even longer than 18 minutes to make fruit juice matzah or egg matzah. However, there is one minority opinion that says that it accelerates the leavening process. And since we don't know how long it takes for an accelerated leavening process to be, we simply don't know if it could have leavened to the point where it would be considered chametz. So even though we don't paskin like that stringent position, we still want people to finish eating all of their egg matzah by the time chametz is forbidden for consumption. That's the reason. Okay. Now, with everything that I've just said, this is the sort of the standard position that you'll find in the Mishnah Brura, and it's the standard position you'll find in many of the other poskim works, that it's really preferred to have bread for Shalosh Shudas. There's 2 problems with this. One is that according to many opinions, you cannot fulfill the mitzvah of Sudah Shlishit before Chatzot Hayom, before midday. So you're washing a second time in the morning really doesn't accomplish the objective of Shalosh Shudas. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that some poskim are concerned that you're going to be so bahul, as we say in Hebrew, you're going to be so nervous. Quick, check, is it, what time is it? What time is it? And so you'll bench after your first meal, and you won't wait an adequate amount of time before washing for Shalosh Shudas, and you therefore your new making hamotzi will be what's called a bracha she'ena tzricha, an unnecessary making of a bracha, which is tantamount almost like a bracha levatala, a wasteful bracha. And as a result, there are poskim who are not in favor of having Shalosh Shudas in the morning with hamotzi. And there is a very important tshuva that I went over with the Sugya Shiur last week from the Kloisenberger Rebbe of blessed memory that is based on the following Zohar. And that's why I have an asterisk in the notes to bring you to the Zohar at the bottom of the page. This is a very bizarre Zohar. We'll just go through it very quickly. Rabbi Elazar asked his father, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, if a guest arrives at the time of the third Sabbath meal, what that means is he's asking the following question. What if Shabbos and Yom Tov coincide and it's a 2-day Yom Tov such that you're going to eat Shalosh Shudas just in a matter of minutes or hours before it's time to make Kiddush for the second night of Yom Tov? So how does that work out? That is, if the third meal is prolonged until the evening, which commences a festival, do we waive Shalosh Shudas or not? If we waive it, then the guest is debarred from the table of the king. That means that the guest, meaning Yom Tov, is alleviated of having a meal that will cause people to lose their appetite for the Yom Tov. If we do not waive it, then the banquet of the king is itself deficient. Then the Shabbos, which is known as God's day, the meal of the king, Shalosh Shudas, is deficient. So what should you do? How do you deal with this? How do you deal with a situation where Shalosh Shudas is going to come all the way up to the meal of the Yom Tov that is on the second night of Yom Tov? Reb Shimon, his father, replied, the case is like that of a king on whom a guest happened to call. So he took food and put it before him, so that although the king did not eat with him, yet he ate from the food of the king, which means essentially the king defers to his guest. Even though the king is not eating with him, the king is not eating, the God is not allowing Shalosh Shudas to occur, but it's as if he ate from the food of the king. In the household of Rav Hamnuna the elder, however, they used to pay no attention to the guest, meaning Yom Tov at this time, but later they used to set a table for the guest. Now, the Zohar clarifies that this only works when Yom Tov and Shabbos coincide. So the first day of Yom Tov is on a Saturday, and the second day of Yom Tov is a Sunday. And because you have the first day of Yom Tov coinciding with Shabbos, and so Yom Tov itself is a guest of Shabbos. So out of respect to our Shabbos guest, Yom Tov that is, we eliminate Shalosh Shudas according to the Zohar. However, if let's say Yom Tov begins on Sunday or Saturday night, then you still have to have Shalosh Shudas. That's the position of the Zohar. But then the Zohar continues and it says, but Rebbe Lazar said, how is it possible not to set the king's banquet before the guest, seeing that if the 14th day of Nisan falls on a Sabbath, which it does this year, the banquet of the king is waived in favor of the Passover, although it is not yet a guest. Here's an example where it seems from the Zohar that it's a given that you have to dispense with Shalosh Shudas because you have to go into the night of the Seder in a state of hunger, in a state of having an appetite. So the Zohar says clearly that in the situation of where Erev Pesach is on a Shabbos, even though Yom Tov and Shabbos do not coincide, and the Seder is not going to begin until Saturday night, you still push off Shalosh Shudas. This is the position of the Zohar. And the Zohar continues. He said, he replied, there are indeed a number of reasons why the banquet of the king, meaning Shalosh Seudos, is waived on the account of the Passover one, that a man should come hungry to the unleavened bread and bitter herbs. And again, there is no bread after midday, and a table without bread is not complete. However, I myself have always been particular not to waive the third Sabbath meal, even when the Sabbath happens to be on the eve of Passover. On this day, the holy fields of apples is blessed, and higher and lower are blessed. And this day is the link of the two branches of the Torah. So let me just close the door here. So anyway, so what you see from this passage of the Zohar is that at least the opinion of the Zohar, or at least one opinion in the Zohar, is to completely dispense with Shalosh Seudos when it falls out, when Shabbos falls out on Erev Pesach. Based on that, the Kloisenberger Rebbe never used to have Shalosh Seudos when Shabbos coincided with the eve of the Yom Tov. But that is certainly true that since the Zohar specifies this kind of configuration when Shabbos falls out on Erev Pesach, that I'm of the opinion, based on learning this tshuva, that you should not, you need not, and perhaps it's even better not to, wash twice before 10:30 a.m. Washing once 10:30 a.m. is sufficient. That's all you need to do. And then we'll see what to do next, okay? Then we'll see what to do next. And this is where we get back to the notes. Make sure that all your chametz or egg matzah is fully consumed by 10:31 a.m. You should then make sure to recite the declaration of Kol Chamira before 11:47 a.m. The only other consideration for the 3 Shabbos meals is that according to some poskim, you can only fulfill the mitzvah of Shalosh Seudos if you eat the 3rd meal in the afternoon. To satisfy this opinion, the 2nd meal you had in the morning does not suffice, and so you should eat something light in the afternoon, such as a piece of fish, egg, salad, fruit, or non-gebrachts Pesach confections. And the reason why we said non-gebrachts Pesach confections is because even though you're technically not eating matzah if you're having matzah balls, but past a certain time in the afternoon, a matzah ball is considered something that is masbia, that it fills you up, and it might spoil your appetite. With the reminder that by this time you may have neither chametz nor egg matzah. Make sure not to eat too much in the afternoon so that you will have a hearty appetite for the Seder. Now, the next thing we have to mention has to do, and this is the last part, which is Seder preparations. Now, normally, you come home, the men come home from shul, and the table is all set, the beautiful Pesach finery is already out, and everything is prepared to begin the Seder as soon as possible. And indeed, the Shulchan Aruch says that it is very important to do your best to start the Seder as quickly as possible, as soon after nightfall as possible. You may not start the Seder before nightfall, even in a regular year, even on let's say the 2nd night, even if, let's say you davened Ma'ariv earlier, you still cannot start the Seder until 8:43 p.m., which is, I believe, the Zman for approximately for the 1st and 2nd nights. Now, why is that? So the Mishnah Berurah gives 2 reasons for this. Reason number 1 is because the Kiddush that you make has to be made at a time when you're capable of eating matzah. And you're not permitted to eat matzah for the Seder until nightfall, because the mitzvah of eating matzah is kashur, is scripturally connected to the mitzvah of eating the Korban Pesach. And the Korban Pesach clearly says balail or balayla. So balayla. They have to eat it at night. So you have to wait until nightfall to eat the Paschal lamb. And the matzah can only be eaten at a time when you can eat the Paschal lamb. And Kiddush, therefore, can only be made at a time when you can have the matzah. So you can't make Kiddush early for either the 1st or the 2nd Seder. But the poskim still say that notwithstanding, you should try to begin the Seder immediately upon the setting in of nightfall. And why is that? Anyone know the reason why you have to start as quickly as you can? For the children, because you don't want the children to fall asleep. Is the main person at your Seder, we should all be Zoche, but the main star of your Seder are the children who have this wide-eyed curiosity of all the crazy things that we're going to be doing. We don't get as fascinated by it. And so the Seder was designed mostly for children who are going to gain a tremendous education. And it's very important that we do our best to try to gear our Sidorim to our small children. I know this can be sometimes very challenging, especially, let's say, if you have people of all different ages at your Seder. And maybe some of the older, let's say the young adults, want to give over very complex divrei Torah at the Seder. But that's going to cause the small children to fall asleep. So you should tell your very learned and scholarly guests, tonight is for the children. It's not really for us to discuss complex divrei Torah. And I'll be happy to have that discussion after the Seder is over and the children have gone to bed. I'll stay up with you for as long as you like, and we'll share some very scholarly divrei Torah. But for now, let's stay focused on the kids and pull out our hand puppets and dress up in all of these very interesting ways to keep our children, who most of whom have ADD, as engaged as possible. Okay, so anyway, so therefore, we recommend that all Seder preparations be completed on Friday, including the grinding of the horseradish and the checking of the lettuce for maror, the making of the charosas, preparing the salt water, and all other cooking and meal preparations. One is not permitted to prepare for the Seder on Shabbos. That's a big no-no, because as we all know, you're not allowed to prepare on Shabbos for after Shabbos, even if that preparation does not involve malacha. So even, let's say, setting the table, you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, okay? Therefore, one must wait until Shabbos is over, 8:44 p.m., recite the words Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh leKodesh, blessed is he who separates between holiness to holiness. And then one may set the table, get the chairs, start warming the food, and any other preparations for the Seder. Okay, is that clear? Any questions? Okay, and then finally, remember that in Ma'ariv on Motzei Shabbat, on Saturday night, when we're in shul, we will recite the standard Yom Tov davening, but we'll include the paragraph of Vatodi Enu in the Amida, which is sort of like, it's comparable to the short little prayer that we say on a regular Saturday night in the bracha of Atachonen Antanu. We say Vatodi Enu when Shabbos leaves and goes into Yom Tov. We will allow for saying Ma'ariv even before nightfall. There's no problem of saying Vatodi Enu even before it's completely nightfall. You will also make Havdalah in the Kiddush that you make at the first Seder Saturday night, as is printed in the Haggadah. It's called Yak Nahaz. It's an acronym that's used by the Gemara, which means that you will include a whole bunch of other things. In addition to Yayin and Kiddush, the Bari Pri Hagafen and Kiddush, you'll also have Ner. You'll have Havdalah. You'll say the bracha of Baruch HaMavdil ben Kodesh l'chol, as is printed in your Haggadah. And, of course, Zion is Zman. You'll say the Shehechianu both nights of the Seder. Okay? So it's not as complicated as it seems. Just that you'd be best served by just reviewing this, let's say, on Friday, as you go into Shabbos. Make sure that you've got everything all set before Shabbos, which I think most people would normally do anyway. You're normally going to want to have all your meals prepared and all of the charosas and the maror and the salt water prepared before Shabbos anyway. And so you're all set. Don't sweat it. Yeah.
Father mentioned something about how the Havdalah candle has to be super small or just like lasting a very short amount of time.
So it can burn out on its own. Okay, so here's the thing. It's a very good point. On Yom Tov, we are allowed to create a flame from an already existing flame. So you can create a new flame on Yom Tov. And that's why, let's say, how are you going to light candles Saturday night? So you'll have a Yortzeit candle that's already there, or you can take from the pilot light if you have a pilot light on your oven. You can use that to light a match, which can then be used to light a candle. Or you can hold the candle directly to the Yortzeit candle and light from that. Now, what you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov is you're not allowed to extinguish a flame. You're only allowed to light a flame. You're not allowed to extinguish. And so this creates an issue if, let's say, you're going to be using a special Havdalah candle, and when you're making Kiddush Saturday night, you would have to put the candle down, but you can't blow it out or in any other way extinguish the flame. So that might be why your father instructed you to use a short candle so that it'll burn out on its own. But that's not necessarily the solution. What we do in our home is that my wife takes 2 of the Yom Tov candles that she's already lit and brings them over to where I'm standing when we're making Kiddush. And we make Borei Me'orei Ha'esh on those 2 flames. Now, some people touch the flames together when they make the Havdalah that way. But I don't recommend that, because there is an opinion that says that when you pull the 2 flames apart, that's a form of extinguishing, because 2 flames separately are smaller than 2 flames together. In other words, the sum of the parts is greater than the parts separated. So that's for that reason we just hold the candles so that the 2 flames are adjacent to each other, but not literally connecting. Okay, does that answer your question? And then you put them back into their candle holders. It's completely fine. Yeah.
Window of time, when you're not allowed to really eat too much, and there's a lot of options.
Right. Yeah, we don't permit kitniyot on Erev Pesach. That's what Minhag Ashkenaz is, not to permit kitniyot even on Erev Pesach. It's a good question, and you would say to yourself, well, why the heck not, right? It's only kitniyos after all. But that's the minhag. That's the minhag. Yes.
It's not 2 flames. You can use it.
Technically, you can use a 1-flamed candle for Havdalah. It's considered to be a hiddur to have 2 flames, but you're still yotzei the bracha of Borei Me'orei Ha'esh on one flame. But like I said, better to have 2 whenever possible. Okay. Yes.
There's a question on Saturday night when lighting the Pesach candle, whether one says the bracha and then lights, or lights and says the bracha.
Yes, that's a good question. It's a question that is pertinent on every Yom Tov. It's for every Yom Tov. It's not just for Pesach. It's pertinent for Sukkot, Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah, etc. The difference between Shabbos and Yom Tov is that on Yom Tov you're allowed to ignite a flame. On Shabbos you're not permitted to do so. So what we do is on Shabbos the women light first and then say the bracha. The reason is because there's a concern that when a woman says the bracha, she's accepting Shabbos through the recital of the bracha. And as a result, that would preclude her from being able to light once she's made the bracha. So that's the reason. Normally, whenever you do a mitzvah, you say the bracha first and then you do the mitzvah. This is one of those few instances where you first light and then you say the bracha, because of that issue that I just presented, that the recital of the bracha itself may, in a woman's mind, be an acceptance of Shabbos. But it's for that reason that women cover the flame right after they light it while they're saying the bracha. That's why they put their hands on. It's not interpretive dance, as some people might think. It's not jujitsu, and it's not, what do they do in the park? What is that called? Tai Chi. It's not Tai Chi in the front of the candles. What you're doing, really, from a technical standpoint, is you're covering the flame, saying the bracha, and then pulling your hands away so that the mitzvah is evident after the bracha has been recited. Now, on Yom Tov, it's different. on Yontif, a woman can recite the bracha first so that even if she's already accepted Yontif through the recital of the bracha, she can still light the flame. She can still light the candle, right? Because you're allowed to light a flame on Yontif. So that's the difference. And this is brought down in the poskim, that on Yontif, when you're lighting candles on Yontif, a woman may say the bracha first and then light, unlike Shabbos. Okay. Yes, sure.
Have to actually bring the candles, or can you just look at them?
Yeah, I mean, that's the concern, is if they're on the other side of the room, you're getting more light from the electric lights than you are from the candles. So they should be sufficiently close so that you can hold your hand up to them and see the light reflecting off of your fingernails. Or you can walk over to the fire, as long as it's in the same room. Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, you can do that too. Yes.
Based on the whole, so, but we don't actually have to wash twice before attending.
That's exactly what I said. Yes. Once is fine. And then have something small to eat in the afternoon.
Just washing, just quick.
Yeah.
Not like after that washing, you're done with the eating by 10:31, but can you not go into a full Shabbos lunch like at 11, like with chicken and potato, like all kosher birthday stuff, I'm saying, like, could you not have a full Shabbos lunch at 11 or?
You
10 or
could.
12?
Absolutely, you could. Yeah, you could.
You're not
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
People will be hungry.
Yes.
You can have a really good-
Especially in the Sonnenberg home. I know your sons, they're growing boys. They may. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay, sure.
Your motzi, then you can do a motzi at 3, like for that.
No, you may,
Have to.
Hamotzi is done by 10:31. Yeah, and you're finished eating theoretically, right. But you should probably bench. I would think that it's probably appropriate to bench before or shortly after 10:30, because my only concern would be is like, what if someone forgets? They see the bread on the table, they see whatever, or the egg matzah on the table, they may be tempted to eat of it. I would recommend benching and then removing everything that's the egg matzah or the bread. I would recommend removing it off the table and then just have whatever you want with just regular food afterwards. Yeah.
Like, what is your standard? What do you tend to do?
So when I was younger, Karen and I have been married for a number of years. When in our younger years, I did the 2 meals before 10:30. Then I learned the tshuva from the Kloisenberger Rebbe and made a lot of sense to me. And so even though it's not indicated by other poskim, like the Mishnah Berurah, but I only wash once. And then we'll probably have something light, maybe an apple or something like that in the afternoon. I find that at this age, my appetite gets ruined very easily. And so I do want to be able to go into the Seder with a hearty appetite. So, yeah, I mean, if you don't bench by until 11, it's also okay. But the matzah eating should be done. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Questions about small children and egg matzah or matzah shira. Would you allow small children to eat matzah later than 10:30 as a snack at lunchtime? Or
I mean, let me put it to you this way. If they find it on their own and they decide to eat it, I'm not going to pull it out of their hands and make a scene. But I would probably say for purposes of chinuch, it's probably best not to give the children anything that I know you're not supposed to eat on once you're bar mitzvah. That's, generally speaking. It's the same thing. Like if I find one of my small children playing with a muktzah toy, I'm not going to grab it away from them, but we try to put it aside so they can't have access to it if it's at all possible.
It's not matzah.
Yeah,
It's also not a wrap.
yeah, yeah,
That's my.
yeah. Right. Yeah, Eddie.
So the only advantage of using the egg matzah over challah is that you don't have to worry about the crumbs. But
That's
you
right.
Put away at the same time, you have to stop eating
You
it.
you don't have to put it away. I mean, you're not going to eat it on Pesach.
Right, but you stop eating it at the same time. And
You stop eating it at the same time. Yeah. All right. Yes.
It's the dish or matzah or something, it's still okay at 2 or 3 in the afternoon. you can
Correct.
have matzah.
You can eat everything that's shahakol all the way up until shkia, up all the way up until sunset. But the matzah balls you have to stop at the beginning of the 10th hour. What we would say is I have to really look at the zman of mincha ketana. I don't have that zman right in front of me, but I have it on my phone. Yeah, until a half an hour before mincha ketana. So let's see, do we have? Here, I'll just look it up on my calendar, on my computer. Here, let's see.
Like, and then you have the Shabbos and Yom Tov, you can have all this lines, like a chart for the whole month, it tells you all the key times.
Yeah, I mean, we have such a chart that we use in the shul. Mincha ketana is at what time? 5:12. Okay, so there you have it. I'm looking at, yeah, mincha ketana. I actually have on, let's see, on April 12th is at 5:22 is mincha ketana. That's what I have. So what that means is that you could have matzah balls until 5:22, but half an hour before 5:22. So let's say 4:45, just to be on the safe side. All right. Okay, I think we'll hold it here for tonight. You're always welcome to email me or WhatsApp me your questions. V'chag kasher v'sameach, everybody. I don't mind the WhatsApp, no. Okay, take it. An extra.